You got Frank
Oh.
Ocean. Oh, that's too.
I was
Oh,
gonna.
Hello, friend.
Okay.
Do you want something to drink?
No, I'm all right.
Hey.
Hi.
Comfort. Hey.
The brown one, yours also? No.
My girlfriend's best friend's dog. Should be live.
Yeah. Seems like Twitter Spaces worked pretty well last time, right? Seems like Twitter Spaces worked pretty well last time, right? Seems like Twitter Spaces worked pretty well last time, right? Seems like Twitter Spaces worked pretty well last time, right?
Cool. Welcome to Toxic Airwaves. How you doing tonight, Skeef?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah. It's a good day. Good day to be a proud owner of Bitcoin, to be free of shitcoins. So yeah. You want to start us off with our sponsor?
Absolutely. We are very, very thankful to have our faithful sponsor, Dirtbags Bar in Tucson, Arizona. They are running a special this week that I just made up, $4 domestics. So get on over there and buy some beer and support Toxic Airwaves and Dirtbags Bar. And again, that is the best place in Southern Arizona to meet your future ex-wife.
Tell them Skeef sent you, and
That's
that
right. Actually, $4 is a little pricey. Let's make it $3.
Yeah, we're actually trying to get a real sponsorship here. So put in a word for us if you're over there. We're not actually sponsored yet. But
Yet being the key word, yet.
Yeah, so we had a bunch of stuff happen over the past week. World's pretty crazy right now, pretty huge. You feeling pretty bullish or pretty bearish on the trajectory of where we're going?
I just never know. When we were in the 50s, I was certain it was never going to go below 50. So you don't want price predictions from me.
Yeah, I definitely was not expecting going this low either, but I also wasn't expecting a real China ban or
yeah, that's been wild after they faked us out all those times.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit complacent. I've gotten woken up pretty good, so ready to roll. Oh, Stephen Cole joined us.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so we had a pleb that fooled a bunch of news outlets with a fake story about Israel buying Bitcoin. That was, a pretty amazing event that happened. I thoroughly enjoyed that. You said you saw that?
I saw the story, yeah. I believe it's $2.5 billion is what he made up, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. The plebs control the news now. We're not the only ones that can generate fake news. I think a lot of people are really fed up with all the FUD that's being spread about China mining and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't pay a lot of attention to it. Like I forget who made this point, but it might have been American Hodl. But somebody said something to the effect of they can't even come up with anything that's not on the FUD dice. Like literally all of the big narratives and attacks are on those FUD dice. It's uses too much energy, et cetera, et cetera. And it's, I don't know. Like when I hear, people making all these crazy arguments, it's like, yeah, dumb people are being dumb. It's not, these things happen.
What's your favorite argument against Bitcoin?
As far as like the most legitimate or just the most hilarious?
Both.
Okay. Most hilarious is probably, that's a good question. I don't know. I guess I think a lot of the, I don't know, like the energy stuff is the easiest. Like it's a perfect indicator of, oh, this person has no idea what they're talking about. Which is fine. It's true of most people, but like it's clear. That's like a perfect example of somebody who's repeating things that they heard somebody else say rather than actually thinking about it. And so that's a pretty nice filter for people. The most legitimate, I guess the thing I'm definitely most concerned about is I would say complacency in the area of like regulatory capture and things like that of, something we talked about, I think last week was the possibility that they're going to do an outright self-custody ban, 6102, et cetera, et cetera. That, in my view, is extremely unlikely. But what's very likely, I think, is that they'll just continue to ratchet down all of the limitations that they have, $10,000 limit on this, either not adjusted for inflation or it gets adjusted down to 3,000, to 1,000, to 500. And then it's like, people that are, willing to totally operate within the system and not kind of buck the rules at all are now, signing a thing that says I own this address and I'm responsible for everything that happens after. And, I'm not going to use CoinJoin because that's, immoral and unethical and whatever. And so that, that won't affect you and me. it probably won't affect the people listening to this because we're going to tell them to get fucked. But it would affect a lot of people who don't take that approach.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, we've got Don Reddy in the chat.
Hell yeah. What's up,
Our
Don?
biggest fan. He told me before that, well, I shouldn't assume, but Don said that 3 beers in already.
Hell
Don's
yeah.
ready to roll.
Let's go.
So got some good comments. So who are we going to fake out next? Well, here on Toxic Airwaves, we are the utmost. We have the highest integrity when it comes to reporting on the news. We don't spread and disseminate fake news. That is, but we can enjoy it. It is very enjoyable. Don says he's heard that Hunter Biden's been buying crack on the darknet for years. Yeah, probably.
I could see that. I mean, I'm not one to judge other people's personal choices, but that guy, I don't know, it's almost impressive what he's been able to somehow get away with.
Yeah, I
mean,
agree.
Who his dad is, I'm sure helps.
Yeah, Hunter Biden, poor guy. I mean, I just think it would suck to be the son of somebody that famous, and there's just like a lot of pressure that's put on you, a lot of scrutiny, because if it was just some normal guy doing crack and whatever else, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But then again, I don't feel a ton of empathy for him.
Yeah, the $300K a month or whatever it was from the Ukrainian gas company probably softens the blow a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. So it's been a little bit spooky out there this week. We've had some pretty interesting things happen, from Cuba to South Africa, and a very, very sketchy assassination in Haiti.
Yeah, the 3 main countries that basically rejected the COVID vaccine, it was Zambia, Tanzania, and Haiti. I mean, granted, the Zambia guy was 97 years old, so I'll let you judge whether we count that one or not. But all 3 had their leader at minimum taken out under suspicious circumstances.
Yeah. I'm going to say it outright. Like, the vaccine push that we're seeing right now is kind of creepy.
Yeah. And it gives a lot of, like, I'm sure a lot of people heard Whitney Webb on Tales from the Crypt and maybe some other podcasts, but that was something, I mean, early 2020, right? As this stuff, maybe March or so, as this stuff was getting ramped up, she was making the case. This is all about the vaccine. It's about, they're getting to a point where they want as many people as possible to take the vaccine, get ready for the push. It's going to come, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, I would say that's probably a lot of what we're seeing now.
Yeah.
That, and they've got warehouses of this stuff that they've got to sell.
I'm just amazed at how unashamedly authoritarian people are being right now, because it's to be expected from, the titans of industry and big government, these, maniacs in government that we have. But, for normal individuals to go out there and get really upset. I had an argument with somebody that, claimed to be a democratic socialist Bitcoiner, which I thought was kind of, an interesting perspective, because I see those two things as kind of polar opposites. But they were telling me that they were talking bad on our friend Katie.
Oh.
And
well, fuck them automatically.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Katie fan.
I will always stick up for Katie the Russian.
Absolutely.
I will go to bat. I'll lay under the tracks for her. She's awesome.
Did you tell him you were a vegan carnivore? That could.
I should have. That's a good one. I almost did tell him to buy XRP.
I'm a vegan who only eats red meat. It's good. It works for me.
XRP is the perfect coin for the democratic socialist.
Yeah. I like to tell people it's Bitcoin without all the climate and racial justice issues.
Yeah. Well, this is something that's kind of funny, like in the Libertarian Party, is a lot of people kind of spill over that are, claim to be left libertarian, meaning like they want like Medicare for all and all of these things. And it seems kind of silly to me, the idea of like wanting individual rights protected, but wanting a giant government as
Yeah.
well.
And I think my best attempt at steel manning their argument would be, they say if we have a baseline amount of government services that protect people from, going bankrupt or whatever, then the free market can thrive because there's a floor and, nobody's going to starve to death, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know. I think that falls apart pretty quickly once you look at what kind of power the state needs just to enable that. And then the idea that they're going to use that even slightly wisely is pretty hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really simple. When you give somebody a lot of power, they have the potential to abuse it. And there's not a lot of, potential to stop that. That's why it's important. I was taught in public school where my soul was crushed and I'm recovering from, I was told that the United States government has checks and balances to prevent authoritarianism and to prevent all of this stuff. But I think, as individuals, we need checks. We are the checks and balances on government, and our ability to say no. We have a dog that's being bad here.
Our co-host.
Yeah, we have two other co-hosts today. This is Gunther. But yeah, we are the in a large degree the checks and balances against the government, and this is why it's so important to really get upset when they start attacking the Bill of Rights, in my personal opinion, or to use freedom technologies like Bitcoin, and this is probably more what you think, but
Yeah.
Bitcoin or 3D printed guns, stuff like that, encrypted messaging. Because I just saw a headline, I didn't read too much into it, but I saw that the government's looking to work with cell carriers to censor any messages that are negative about the vaccine. I thought that was crazy.
Yeah. And you mentioned Katie earlier, but it's like, her whole business is helping people with jurisdictional arbitrage. And, that's the conversation I was having, this past week was just, basically what does it look like for a person to get, it's like their life into Bitcoin, either earning Bitcoin or mining Bitcoin or just having enough to be set for life or, some combination of those three things, just how much of a game changer that is for a person's personal liberty. Because it's like once you're in that position, then it's like, oh, this country sucks. Like this country is trying to follow the model of the Soviet Union. That's cool. We'll go somewhere else. And, I don't know. And it's even, I've got kids, so it's logistically, it's a little bit more difficult with stuff like that. But still, it's just the freedom it enables is unreal. And I don't know, it's just very exciting to watch and to see people wake up to that at scale too, which is something I think that we're going to see over the next few years is, probably everybody listening to this is aware of the kind of freedom that Bitcoin enables, but to see millions, then tens of millions of people wake up and realize, oh, I can use this to just completely opt out and not care about anything that they say or do. That's a pretty big win. And it's like, if only 10% of the population goes down that road in the next 2 decades, like that would be just life-changing for, I think, human freedom in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's huge. It's amazing. Like one of my favorite things to do with people is to, teach them about the idea of inflation and how their wealth is getting destroyed, and then contrast that against Bitcoin and then watch them stack for a while and have some meaningful semblance of savings probably for the first time of their lives. And that is huge. And then having censorship money that they don't have to ask permission to use is, gigantic as well, because banks suck. Speaking of banks, guess who were the first people to sign on for the whole ESG movement?
Was it banks?
It was banks.
Grifters in chief.
It was BlackRock, it was Morgan Stanley, and it was JP Morgan. Surprised Citigroup wasn't in there too.
Yeah.
They're probably pretty quick into that. Yeah, I mean, I've been looking into ESG a little bit this week. I didn't do as much of a deep dive as I'd wanted to, but I saw, a really interesting headline that Raytheon our good friends over at Raytheon are doing some critical race theory teaching, and I thought that might be a good topic to discuss. And I was kind of diving into, why would a missile company, part of the uh, defense industry that makes money off of killing people, want to teach critical race theory? And it turns out they're a publicly traded company, and ESG impacts them. It depends. Their ESG score influences how much money that they can raise. Um, and
And ironically, being directly complicit in murdering children for living in the wrong country does not hurt your ESG score. So as long as you do that with solar power and, diverse teams, then I guess you're good to go.
yeah. Yeah, I think like kind of going back to what you were saying, Raytheon's one of the few places in Tucson that you can work. You can either work at, the brainwashing school called University of Arizona, or you can work for Raytheon or, a couple of other defense contract agencies or whatever. And a lot of people opt into doing that, especially if they're, an engineer. And Bitcoin really gives you the freedom to pick and choose where you want to work, because you are able to have a semblance of savings, and it's, potentially life altering money.
Many years ago, so I was in Tucson, then left, and then came back recently. And when I was here before, I had a extensive conversation with this guy who was like a relatively high up VP out at Raytheon, because he found out what I do for work, and we are just kind of shooting the shit. And he was asking me, what kinds of things would you look for? Would you like to do this, this, and this? And I was like, no fucking way I would ever work for your company. And then he asked why. And so I told him why. And he was like, oh, yeah, I don't think you'd be a good fit. I was like, yeah, no shit. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is, the thing that's coming up, this idea of personal responsibility and taking ownership for yourself, and how important that is. Of like, I don't think that just saying, okay, I'll work it for this awful company that does these awful things because it makes good money is going to cut it anymore, because all of this stuff is having disastrous impacts on our lives, and it's coming back to bite people really hard. First and foremost, our government is completely insolvent because of its practices, because of this militarization. Individual liberties have been completely, destroyed, and are, being impacted pretty radically. And, this plays a part in it, a huge part, feeding into the intelligence agencies and all that crap. But, okay, Don's got a question. Does Lightning promote custodial solutions?
That's a good question. It's definitely a lot easier. Like it's, Wallet of Satoshi is a hell of a lot easier than running your own node. Like I'm actually still very, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like Lightning handicapped or something like that. Like I don't use it really much at all. Like I have little blue wallet, whatever that is, semi custodial, and then Strike, which doesn't even count. That's kind of the extent of my Lightning use.
Yeah. I think it does initially, and there's some pretty cool movements going on right now, like with the plebnet, and we're working on it out here in Arizona to get a bunch of connected Lightning nodes together, so that's a lot easier to use Lightning without a custodial solution. And I think if people do a little bit of work, like running a Lightning node is fairly easy, especially with Git Umbrel or MyNode, or the millions of solutions out there to do it. So I think it's totally possible. Some of the limitations that are difficult right now is managing channel capacities and liquidity. So like for a business owner, it's kind of difficult to accept Lightning payments with BTC Pay Server at a large scale if they're not very technical. So OpenNode, I've seen a lot of people opt in for that, or BitPay. I'm not sure if BitPay uses Lightning or not. They probably do. I will never touch that company or suggest them. But those are like the two commonly used ones that are essentially similar to PayPal or Square because they are custodial. So I think that's a solution that we need to be figuring out and creating a bunch of uh, connected nodes together. With good liquidity instead of having to rely on routing nodes is a great way to go about it. But I also see problems with how much Bitcoin is on exchanges, as well as how much we rely on exchanges in our ecosystem. And I think that to a certain degree promotes some sort of censorship because I think it's easy to manipulate the price, and it would be a lot easier to get 6102 detect in the case of having all the Bitcoin on the exchange. So that's kind of my thought of like another thing that we need to be focusing on is self custody. Okay.
And then real quick on that, there is a Telegram group for plebnet, kycjelly.com. Funny name, but it'll get you there and you can join that group. Like I said, I'm not super involved in Lightning World, but I'm familiar with that group. And then a very good friend of mine, Bobo Dread, is one of the people organizing that.
Nice. So yeah, Breeze and Moon are not custodial. I've messed around with Breeze a little bit. I need to downloaded Moon. Haven't played around with it yet. But I would assume that they're non-custodial because you're probably running whatever that it's not a full node, whatever that's called. Yeah. Neutrino or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that makes sense. Yeah, I think those are pretty good solutions. But yeah. So it sounds like Ethereum's having some issues right now.
And they're like particularly bad. They're not just like the normal run of the mill. The most hilarious, and I know a lot. So I've seen a lot of people try to rationalize because they've always been against layer 2 for I don't know how many years, and then all of a sudden they're talking about other layers and scaling on other layers and all this stuff. And they always shit on Lightning and all this other stuff because it wasn't at the base layer. And I've seen a lot of people like try to rationalize, like make rational arguments of like, oh well, dear Ethereum people, here's why that's irrational and doesn't make sense. And it's like, no. These people they generally don't have minds. They don't have like much of an ability to think critically or anything like that. Like they got a new set of marching orders, which is that layer 2 is good. So now they're following that. They're like, they're the people that watch CNN 20 or 30 hours a week. It's kind of the same mindset, I think.
Yeah, I think it is for some people. I think for a lot of people, they just kind of get wowed by Vitalik talking about sharding or whatever. We should probably lead with him doing his weird funky dances or I don't know. I've seen some pretty good memes making fun of Vitalik, but I think a lot of people just, maybe not having minds is a good one, but maybe they haven't heard a good argument against it. And I think that's what I stumble across a lot is people just kind of get wrapped up in the marketing. They think it's decentralized and they think it's, similar to Bitcoin, but different. They think you can build apps on it and stuff, and that's cool. Whereas Bitcoin is slow or eliminated or whatever they say.
Yeah. And that's, I like to, like, if I find somebody who's like interested, but just kind of ignorant, I kind of explain how easy it would be for like something that wouldn't even take the government, like Amazon could shut down Ethereum just by changing their policy of what can be hosted on AWS. And it's, like that's so much like the core of their infrastructure runs on AWS.
But Amazon's distributed around the world, man.
Yeah.
It's hard to shut it down because you have servers all over the place.
Yeah. Unless they decide they don't want to work with cryptocurrency stuff, or they're just like, and it's like, and I told that somebody one time and they're like, well, they would never do that. I'm like, why wouldn't they? Like, this is a rounding error on a rounding error as far as their total revenue. And, they're doing multi-billion-dollar contracts with the government all the time.
Exactly.
If the government comes to them and says, hey, it's either us or Ethereum, they won't even be done talking before Ethereum is done. And it's like they know exactly which horse they're going to pick in that race.
There's been some talk recently of launching a CBDC on Ethereum. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I sure hope they do. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I don't think anybody's dumb enough to do that.
Oh.
It would fall
Be
apart
like
pretty quick.
a shitcoin failure mixed with the government failure. It'd be like Christmas.
Actually, we still have the DMV somehow.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's kind of a statist, and he had a realization recently of the DMV being incredibly stupid. It's funny to break things down to first principles to explain things, like, because where he lives, they don't even have to do emissions, so there's not even a logical argument to go and get what was I gonna say? Got distracted. I got a notification. You don't even have to have the justification of it's for the environment. It's just another tax to add to the list. Bureaucracy. Have you ever stumbled across somebody that's presented to you the mining narrative, or is that just something you've kind of experienced on the internet?
Like in person.
That Bitcoin's bad for the environment.
Oh yeah. No, I know some people who work at Tesla and was with them a while ago, and that was the big thing. Like this would have been like last November, so around 16K or so, and they were going on about like one guy explained this guy had a lot of money, and he basically said, I could never buy Bitcoin. When are they going to solve the energy use thing? And I said, they're not. And he goes, well, what's the plan for using less energy? I said, there isn't one. It's going to use way more. And he goes, oh, that just, I don't know. I don't feel good about that. It doesn't work for me. I was like, okay, bye. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like this thing, it uses, I forget what the number is today, as much as Switzerland or something like that. And it's like, let's ramp that up. Like, when can we get to Germany? And when can we get to all these other big countries? And so it's, the people that, I don't know, see that as a negative and don't see it as like a very, very real physics limit that enforces the integrity and security of the network. It's, I don't know, it's just a very shallow understanding of how all this works and what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, California's having issues with their power grid because so many people are charging their Teslas at the same time. I thought that was pretty funny when they were urged to change their charging habits.
And because they built how many windmills instead of nuclear power plants. It's like that's something that's fucking Texas too lately.
Yeah. They've
got all these windmills everywhere that most of them produce less energy throughout their lifespan than it costs to create them. And so the whole thing is just, I don't know, the whole thing's just such a massive clusterfuck.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was talking with Bitcoin Motorist about this, and him and I are, on a pretty similar page when it comes to this, as far as like wanting to preserve the environment and be sustainable. But like all of these practices that are incredibly destructive, like that, him and I both agree we need to be on nuclear as much as possible, because that is the least destructive across the board. And yeah, they just destroy the environment with these windmills and with the solar panels, both from, mining the materials to make them and then just plopping them down somewhere, and that could be pristine land. And it's just so dumb.
And like massive nuclear facilities, to me, like that would be the best, because this whole fiat system is dying. This idea that you can borrow 30 years at 3% or 2% or whatever it is, totally insane. And so using that to build a bunch of like nuclear power, like stuff that actually makes economic sense, like these massive, billion-dollar projects, things like that. It's like if they were remotely smart, they'd be like, okay, well, this is going away. The math doesn't work. Like, we're doing is saying that time is inconvenient and that there shouldn't be any interest rates, but we might as well go out with a bang and get a whole bunch of nuclear power out of it.
Yeah.
But they won't do that. They'll spend it on who knows what.
And just consolidating everything. Bitcoin Motorist hates circumcision. What are your thoughts, guys?
I think he's correct. It's a barbaric practice.
Yeah, I don't really have any thoughts on it. I did enjoy Don's comment about how stable coins are moving to Tron from Ethereum. That's been a thing for a while.
And that Binance chain too.
Oh yeah, Binance. We should do a deep dive on Binance chain sometime. Yeah, I mean it's really not that hard to make something better than Ethereum. Justin's son popped up recently. I think he popped up with the El Salvador news because he was trying to do something down there, and I haven't heard that name in years. Like, I don't know if anything's happening with Tron.
Last I saw from him, he was somehow at the same party as Peter McCormick, and Peter McCormick had a video of him saying, "Buy my shitcoin." That was the last thing I saw.
Oh.
I think that was sometime last year.
That's funny. Yeah. Oh yeah, that party. Oh my gosh.
I forget what it was.
It was okay. So this is what happened. So Brock Pierce and the Shitcoin Brigade went down to El Salvador for a day for a photo op and then left. And they stayed in an incredibly nice hotel. Didn't go out into the community around El Zante. Didn't spend anything other than at that hotel. It's just ridiculous. Just so ridiculous. Like that kind of upsets me.
Sounds like what the World Bank and IMF crowd does in developing countries.
Yeah.
It's basically a, revenue scheme for the Four Seasons.
Yeah. Yeah. The IMF. I heard there's some pretty good guys over there.
Might be a couple.
And the World Economic Forum. They have our best interest in mind.
Yeah.
You should probably trust them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see if any of our listeners have anything to say. So do you have any updates on the Chinese miners moving out?
I this weekend was talking to a couple of people that know a hell of a lot more about mining than I do. And like one guy was telling me about somebody he knows that has really big operations. My understanding is they'll buy a bunch of miners ahead of time. And so this guy has a pretty good size operation in China. There's actually two people, and they're basically, long story short, they can't use their facilities because China shut everything down. But they had already bought a ton of miners. So one guy had, I believe the number was 2,000 miners per month, like brand new S19 Pros coming online. So, at their cost, whatever that is, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a pop, something like that. But you got 2,000 of those per month, and then another guy's got 4,000 per month that are purchased, paid, just coming in each month with no home for it, nowhere to plug it in, nowhere to, they're basically just going to sit in a warehouse. And so the people I was talking to, their best guess was we're going to see pretty good drop in the price of miners over the next few months or so, because apparently there's a lot of people in that boat that had the space in China to bring a whole bunch of these miners online and then got booted from China. So now they have a whole bunch of miners that they committed to and paid for that don't have a home. And so I think there's a few people working on some interesting solutions to that, but I don't think anybody's come up with anything substantive yet.
Yeah, I saw the people essentially being able to lease miners. I don't know if you saw that post that they would send you a miner to host and then revenue share with you, because like a brand new S19, pretty expensive.
And my understanding is today the new S19s are profitable or they produce 40 cents a kilowatt hour. So you can generate a very nice profit on just normal residential power.
That's
off of that.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty impressive because we average about 12 cents kilowatt hour here in Tucson. Yeah, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Should definitely consider. But yeah, I mean, we saw some interesting posts from Southwest HODL about the price of shipping containers being way up, which might prevent them getting shipped across the ocean to us. So it might be a slow go. I mean, we're still watching, the hash rate. It's not necessarily falling any lower than it has, but it's pretty freaking low compared to where it was.
Was I think last time I saw it was maybe 50-60% off the all-time high. Is that
Yeah.
right.
The all-time high was something like 191 exahash, and now it's about 90.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a pretty big drop. Oh, no callers tonight. I was hoping. I definitely argued and pissed off some shit coiners out there this week. Have you ever heard of Luna?
I have not.
Well, somebody thinks that it's going to the moon. It's Do you have any? Okay, let's go back to Haiti. So, do you have any ideas of what actually happened?
That one I haven't looked real in depth, but I've spent more time than I care to admit on those kind of shenanigans in the past, and I don't know, just how I don't know. I think a lot of people, like I've talked to a lot of people, are like, because it's another big thing that comes up is the president of El Salvador. Like the country we live in has a long history of just completely fucking over the entire, Central and Southern America. Oh, you like this guy? You want him to run your country? Sorry, we're going to shoot him because he, wouldn't give us the right deal on fruit or rubber or oil or whatever. And so it's like, there's a lot of people saying, well, they, El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender. It's going to be interesting to see how, like, they basically make the argument, it's going to be interesting to see how they, whoever they is, basically the deep state might be a good grab bag term, but how these people respond to that threat, because they obviously can't just off him. And I hear that and I think, there's no obvious about it. Of course they can. Like, this is a standard part of their playbook. Like, these people have defended threats to their power for decades and decades, at least since World War II, the end of World War II. And it's like they've gone through every threat that's come at them and they've come out on top. And, I don't think they will with Bitcoin, but it's definitely not a layup or a slam dunk for sure. And it's like that paired with the idea of they're not trying to attack Bitcoin, like, because I do think they are smart enough to know they can't even stop BitTorrent. How are they going to stop Bitcoin? Like, I think they get that at a basic level. And so my best guess is what they go for is acquiring actual Bitcoins through blackmail, through regulatory action, through whatever they have to do. Like, they're trying to acquire it either for the government or for themselves, as much as possible. And that, I think, is definitely something to be aware of. But yeah, the idea that they would, that a leader of a country could get taken out for refusing the COVID vax or making Bitcoin legal tender, like, that's, I mean, it's a terrible part of the world that we live in. But
yeah. So there were 3 countries that have had leaders assassinated that refused the vaccine. So Haiti was one of them. Do you know what the other 2 were?
Tanzania and then Zambia.
Oh.
And like I said, Zambia is the one where the guy was 97 years old. So, that one kind of take with a grain of salt. But
Yeah.
the Haiti one is, I think, a slam dunk.
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of ridiculous. It's like so blatant. It's like they go and they kill the president, and then, like, within hours, it's like, we're ready to deploy U.S. troops into your country to promote stability.
And it's a good book on this. Shout out to Kiwi Hodl on Twitter who recommended this to me. But a book called The Economic Hitman. I'm blanking on the guy's name, but
I need to read that.
It's very good.
I listened to a podcast with that guy one time. Young Lark asked, do you think the Cuba outage all over the world, all over the news, is a cover up for the Haiti incident?
Kiva outage? I don't know what that is. Oh, Cuba.
Country of Cuba. There's some massive protests going on there.
That I hadn't thought about that, but it certainly could be. That's what I was wondering, if Cuba might be starting its own, 1989 movement, like what referencing the Soviet Union there. But yeah, I haven't looked into that real depth. That would be, man, to see Cubans throw off their terrorist dictators once and for all would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't really know anything about either Cuban or Haitian politics in the slightest, other than Haiti's really poor and has some super stratified wealth, and that Cuba is communist. And I would have trouble to see how those things are necessarily connected, but I mean, who knows? Like, things are just so crazy right now.
And if you haven't listened to the Citadel Dispatch, I'm gonna say it's like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, but it's the Gladstein one. That's very good on this topic. I learned a ton about how much like influence France still has over Africa, and how much they're like, a lot of stuff that I thought ended in like the 70s or 80s is still going strong today, just as far as being absolutely terrible colonialists, basically.
Yeah. I mean, things are really ramping up geopolitically right now, and I guess they do every couple of years, but it just seems like matched with, the instability that we see. It's a lot scarier than it was when Obama was president, and there was a lot of issues with China and the South China Sea and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it's a great distraction to take a really unhappy populace and say, this is the enemy, that we have to defeat at all costs. But yeah, I wonder.
I think it gives a lot of credibility to this idea of these 80-year cycles, like this fourth turning idea also, which I still haven't read the book, so I'm LARPing right now. But
It's an interesting book.
like that,
Yeah.
that set of ideas. I'm initially wrote it off, but I'm becoming more and more persuaded by that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting idea. I tend to struggle with the idea of prophetic stuff in general. Like, the world is going to end in 2012. I remember when that happened. But I mean, the idea of the fourth turning, it is a very, very interesting read to get into. And as they outline, what's coming of this crisis. And I just hope we get out of it. Like, I think we're kind of in an existential fight right now, of what our future is going to look like. If it's going to be, dark with CBDCs and mandatory vaccines and, crazy stuff like that, travel restrictions, or if it will be a much freer future under a Bitcoin standard.
Yeah. My view is it's both. Like, I think there's going to be absolute communist hellholes for a very long time, but there's also going to be people who opt out and create parallel societies as well. And I don't know. I would love to be wrong, but I think most people will find themselves in the communist hellholes for a good while. I don't know how many years that is, but probably quite a lot.
Yeah, that's frustrating. We need Max Kaiser to go out there and make some laws.
Do you know that with the Bitcoin I have, I can buy any freaking senator or congressman I want? I make the laws. He who has the Bitcoin makes the law.
Where's Max at?
Janet Yellen's a financial terrorist. Mario Draghi's a financial terrorist.
Speaking of Janet Yellen, I was going to mention this at the beginning of the broadcast, that today's the 4-year anniversary of Bitcoin Sign Guy.
Oh, nice.
It's a great moment in history.
Oh. I had the pleasure of meeting him in Miami very briefly.
Nice. That must have been awesome. Yeah, I think he was on Tales from the Crypt one time.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun episode.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if a lot of people bought Bitcoin back then, but it's just so funny to see that moment, like listening to him or listening to Yellen. Where would you be better off? This idea that, man.
My favorite example like that, though, is the story of Bitstein shilling Bitcoin to Mark Cuban in, I want to say, like 2013, 2014, something like that. And like, I forget the exact context. I'm sure he's told it on a podcast, but basically the idea is they were at the same place and he recognized him and, gave him the whole spiel, where it's going, the value proposition, all that kind of stuff. And Mark Cuban obviously did not listen. And it's like, just thinking about, and Mark Cuban ended up, obviously been a massive shitcoiner since at least 2017. So he has some sort of mental deficiency there that keeps him from getting it. But
it's just the incentive structures.
Yeah.
He's a cantillionaire.
But even can you imagine if he had done like a 1% allocation in 2014? Like it would have canceled out all the money he lost from movie theaters and sports teams going on, almost going under in 2020.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. You really don't like Mark Cuban.
Fucking hate Mark Cuban. The guy, well, he's dishonest. That's like the main thing. Like if somebody has different politics than me, but they're at least honest, that's not as big of a deal. But the guy he's slimy and dishonest. I'm not a fan.
I think one thing I'd like to do before I die is give him a bushel of bananas. That'd make me really happy. Especially like if we're living hyper Bitcoinization.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be really, really funny. Well, got no more questions. Don, where you at? Give us something. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how Cuba and Haiti could be connected. I mean, they're both in the Caribbean. That's a strategic, area.
Or that it's just some kind of, I don't know, like pay a bunch of people to cause trouble, false flag type thing to distract from the CIA or whoever taking out Haiti's president.
Yeah, I know that, like, it's just so hard to look at these things, and figure out what it's all about. There's a lot of things pointing to the U.S. being involved in the Colombian government being involved in the assassination. But I think definitively to say that that's what happened is, they very well could have been hired by Russians or Chinese or Brazilians or, oh, okay. Don's got something for us. Skeep's not on Twitter, so I don't know if you saw this, but a bunch of fake pomp accounts that are out there right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he did this thing yesterday where he said that he was going to have a massive announcement today. And so there's a lot of people out there that don't like pomp. I'm kind of indifferent on him.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's been shitcoining recently.
Did his announcement come out?
Yes. His
Okay.
announcement came out.
Was it interesting? What was the announcement? Do you know?
His announcement was that he started a new show with his brothers to try and promote financial literacy. So I don't think there was anything inherently bad about that, but I watched a little bit of it today, and it was just kind of his same spiel that he's been given for years.
Shout out to Pomp's dad, 5 sons though. Good work.
Don says his announcement was a massive
Merch pump.
Yeah. Yeah, some people got pretty nasty with pomp, which I wasn't a big fan of. They're talking about saying that his announcement was him announcing that he's starting an OnlyFans for his wife. And I thought that was pretty, awful to say.
Yeah. Yeah, those people that say stuff like that need to do a little bit more learning about how karma works. Like that, you don't want to put out that kind of energy, man. Like that's no way to go about life.
Yeah, and Pauline is so sweet. Yeah. She seems like a very, very nice person. Yeah. People do crazy things, out there. Like Peter McCormick, you might not like him. I'm grateful for him because he helped me out a lot in my early Bitcoin days with introducing me to some, real solid Bitcoiners that I probably wouldn't have found without, his podcast. And he does a good job of dumbing it down. I don't really like his sponsors that he has on there sometimes, as I think most people don't. But people say some pretty nasty things to him, and I think that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I always, even before I got booted from Twitter, I always had him muted just because his Twitter antics just annoy the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Like the latest thing, you know, basically live tweeting a midlife crisis with some blonde from Miami or something like that. Like that stuff I'm not a fan of, but you know, I don't think he's a bad person. I don't think he's a bad dude. Like I don't, you know, I'm sure I could hang out with him and have a good time, but
Yeah.
not like I had the opportunity. He's at a different social stratosphere than I am, but
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of the cool people.
yeah,
He made it.
definitely an influencer for sure. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of people get very worked up about stuff they have no control over, which I don't really understand. It seems like a giant waste of energy to me.
I think like it's so important to go out there and call out the shitcoiners, and first and foremost, and to give pushback. But you know, there's lines that shouldn't be crossed, like going at making comments about people's wives and stuff like that. So like Conor McGregor, did you watch the fight?
I did.
Man, what a
Yeah.
bummer.
Yeah.
That
Broke
guy's
his
a tool,
ankle.
though.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Conor fan.
Uh,
I think after the whole Khabib Dolly event, I really didn't like him anymore.
yeah.
But when he's like, I mean, it's funny, I guess, but it's just kind of like a classless thing. You break your ankle, and you're laying there, and you're like still screaming at the guy his wife is in your DMs. It's just, come on, man. Like,
Yeah. And it's one thing to talk up a whole bunch of shit when you're backing it up. And I mean, there was a while where he was on a tear. And so he would, kind of, not at all comparing him to Mike Tyson at all, but like he had that kind of like Mike, like his like attitude and his ability to talk shit or whatever. Like he was kind of like that, but it was when he was, knocking people out, and that was pretty impressive. And it's like, then you can talk shit, but it's like he's lost several fights. He got absolutely just dominated by Khabib. And then he's talking about a rematch. And it's like, that guy went to school on you. Like you didn't have a shot. Like he controlled it the whole time and he just owned you. And you're talking about round 2, like fuck yourself. Like you got owned. And then he's still, I don't know. He has a much higher opinion of himself than is warranted, which I have no problem with people being super arrogant if they're, like Mike Tyson at his prime was arrogant as hell. And I think it was awesome because he was knocking out anybody who stepped into the ring.
yeah. I mean, there's just a really easy playbook to take down Conor. It's just get him to the ground.
Yeah.
That's it. It's funny, like the announcers, every time somebody's like has some semblance of a guillotine, they freak out about it like it's a possibility, and like 80% of the time it's not. But okay, Young Lark got a great question, entering into some controversy here. What do you think of the Samurai Monero ordeal?
I don't have a super strong opinion on it. I don't know. I don't like the samurai people, but I definitely don't think they're spooks. Which a lot of people like the idea of, I don't know. I've heard a lot of people make the argument that they're spooks, and that, I don't know, that's never seemed very reasonable to me. But it's, I guess basically what they're doing is enabling atomic swaps with Monero is my understanding. And you don't actually custody Monero within Samurai. I don't know. I've never owned Monero. I've never been terribly interested in it. It's a whole other thing, but I don't know. But people that really, really shill Monero hard, I think have very like shallow understanding of like the game theory of all this and the game theory of what's going on would be my kind of short take on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have like a lot of disagreements with the Samurai crew because I'm a fan of Lightning and they don't like Lightning very much. And their argument, kind of going back to what Don asked earlier about does Lightning push people towards custodial solutions. They argue that it's centralized And, I don't think it is. And I don't think it's inherently, supporting centralization. And I think it's something that we as a community need to focus on decentralizing more. And, there's nothing stopping me from opening up channels with other people. So that's my argument against them. But yeah, I mean, the whole ordeal, it's like with the drama between Wasabi and Samurai, I think it's, Samurai is a good product. From my experience, I met some of the guys over there. It's, I don't know.
Yeah, I will say I thought the Samurai blog post in response to that was super disingenuous because right at the top they made a big point. So they pulled up. So Giacomo Zucco, basically said, how it's going or whatever that meme is, where they said we'll never enable Monero. We'll never. If you ever see an altcoin, it's a sign that we've been compromised or something like that. And then the next tweet was, them saying, hey, we're gonna have atomic swaps with Monero, but they, as I read it, their argument was, and they explicitly said, based on 2 tweets, he's making this argument. And it's like, come on, like he might be right, he might be wrong, but he's not making the argument based on just those 2 tweets. Like he has, Giacomo's a very, very bright guy who's very clued into what's going on, been around in Bitcoin a long time. And I don't know, I thought that was really disingenuous. But again, it's like all my complaints with Samurai are very minor details like that, because what matters at the end of the day is the product and that it's truly free and open source and that it works and that people like it and that people like to use it. Like that's what matters. Like,
had a little contribution. I'm gonna throw something at her.
Our co-host is not going to get his performance bonus today.
No.
But yeah, that's all I'd say. I have plenty of complaints about all that stuff around Samurai, but I'll be the first to admit they're extremely minor details unrelated to whether or not it works and is a good project.
Yeah. And kind of like going back to the Monero, like there's a really strong, Monero crew out there that is very vocal, and I disagree with them a lot. Essentially, like Monero is not freeing in the same way that Bitcoin is because it's not, a great store of value. And like one of the massive aspects of Bitcoin's power is that it protects savings and is built that way. And it is growing at a pace that will, eventually be, I think, somewhat stable currency that can be used in transactions. And I don't think Monero can do that, and there's some issues. I guess they hard fork every 6 months, which, doesn't really promote this idea of decentralization the way that Bitcoin does, which is, a massive security issue, in my opinion. But I would never knock somebody for wanting to focus on privacy because I think that's incredibly important. So,
and it's like a huge difference I have with just personally with the Monero crowd is, because they're, I mean, obviously, one of the big swear words in their world is number go up. They're like, oh, they're just a bunch of finance bros. All they care about is price, and there's definitely a lot of validity to that critique. But I think what they really miss is that what we're trying to do, if we're successful, is accumulate economic power at the end of the day, because we need all these tools. We need to coin join. Virtually 100% coin join. I think I already mentioned that. Like if that becomes a problem in the future, I'll be the first one that gets fucked by it, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Because I'm not interested in a world where I can just use BlockFi and bullshit like that. And so we need all those tools for the short to medium term, but it's like what I think they miss is that the end goal is accumulating economic power and just ending these power structures, period, or at least being completely outside their influence. It's like this idea of out hodl the IRS, hodl, don't spend, or, no spend, of course, I spend, but, don't sell, don't whatever, until either the IRS doesn't exist or you're out from under it. And that, I think is the move. And the more of us that we have, you know, that are liberty minded, that are accumulating economic power with Bitcoin, you know, the bigger that kind of parallel society is that we can enter.
The point is, if you have the superior asset, it's going up forever, Laura.
Yeah,
Forever.
Dom brings up a good point that I should have mentioned as well. Monero's privacy features remove the ability to audit for an inflation bug.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's what, when people talk about privacy at the base layer, maybe, we could have somebody call in who's a little bit more informed, but I have not seen a solution for that doesn't have that problem that Don mentioned. And it's like, if we don't have supply auditability, we don't have Bitcoin. We have something else entirely.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of different privacy coins out there too that I guess McAfee was going to launch his own called like Ghost Coin or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if it ever got out there, but it's when it comes to Bitcoin or any altcoin, like there's so many things coming together. We talked about this in the BIP 300 discussion that we had, and it's not worth the trade-offs oftentimes to manipulate things. And we come up with these solutions over the long term. If we're going to build something lasting and solid and government proof, like it's this slow, low time preference process. And it's not like you can't practice privacy on Bitcoin. Like you can use it privately today. And that's a, major misnomer.
Mm-hmm.
Logical logistics, you got anything for us? I think this is Southwest Huddle from last week.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this is something like Pierre Richard was talking about too. Was that you on there? Oh. Went back to listener. Maybe having some connection issues. But yeah. Oh, he's back on. Hop in whenever you want to. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's something Pierre Richard did was, he tried to audit Ethereum's supply, which proved to be impossible. And I think this is important, if we're going to all be playing by the same rules and have rules, not rulers, not all of these. You need to know the supply of the coin at the end of the day. Any other private Zcash is one that's talked about a lot.
Yeah, that was Zcash. I never bought any, but Zcash was the one that I found tempting when I was still learning about shitcoins and Bitcoin and all that stuff. Like I definitely, like I said, thankfully I did not buy any, but for a period of time bought into that. Oh, it's Bitcoin, but more private. And this, kind of fell for the cult of Zuko and things like that. But got that squared away.
Yeah, Zcash has performed pretty terribly.
Yeah.
I think the Winklevoss twins were promoting Zcash when I got in on Gemini. They had this this thing where you could what's it called? You could buy like a portfolio of a bunch of different coins, and Zcash was lumped in there.
And I believe, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe Naval was also one of the like seed investors in, I don't know how it works with shitcoins, or it's a company or whatever. But anyway, he got a big fat chunk of the pre-mine because
yeah. I mean, that should be a major red flag if there was a pre-mine.
Yeah.
So Zcash was pre-mined?
Or I guess pre-mine might be the wrong word, but they have a what they call a founder's reward, I know.
Oh, okay.
And so that's true. Yeah, I don't know for sure off the top of my head if they did a pre-mine, but there's a significant I think it's significant percent of what gets mined goes to like this founder's reward. I know a chunk of that goes to Zuko himself. Like there's some interesting incentive, and and it's the classic, the classic argument for why that is the same with all the other shit coins. If we need the money to support development or whatever, it's like if people gave a shit about your project, you wouldn't, it'd be open source and people would be contributing to it. You would need to pay people out of. the mining rewards.
Yeah, if you look at Zcash, it's like just as bad as ICP.
Yeah.
It looks like a total exit scam where they listed it around $1,600, and then its all-time high in 2017. This chart sucks. Something like $800, trading at like 100 today.
Yeah.
Like if you're holding onto these things, you want, and they're going to be some form of money, they need to be a store of value. And Bitcoin is the only coin out there that satisfies that in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's like when I'm talking about shit coiners or no coiners, that's the thing that I try to explain almost first and foremost. But yeah. You got any predictions of what's going to happen with this Ethereum hard fork coming up?
I don't know. I haven't read too much. I thought it's something about I don't know, like formally enabling reorganizations, and that's somehow a good thing. I don't know. I haven't looked into it too much because I have a certain amount of stupidity I can handle each week, and I didn't want to use it all on Ethereum.
I think that's separate from the hard fork, but I'm not
Okay.
sure. But that was something that was proposed, and I think it's really funny. So it sounds like the fees are going to continue to go up, but I just think the hard fork is going to get delayed again. That's my
Yeah.
prediction.
Well, and that's it. I can't remember who I saw said this, but somebody said we need to just fork Ethereum, enable proof of stake, and just get it all out there. With the logic being, this fraud can go on so much longer if they just never do the transition. They're like, oh, it's a year away, it's a year away, it's a year away, it's a year away. They can do that for forever. And I don't know. I think there's a very good argument to be made that, Vitalik and crew are, they're basically in a long con to stay out of prison because, if they admit, basically, because the idea is that they've known beyond the shadow of a doubt that it's a completely failed project for years. But if they admit that and abandon it, then, that's a whole big pile of securities violations and all kinds of different stuff, which they've arguably already committed a lot of that. But it's basically the idea is that they're dragging it out as long as possible, because if if it just blows up overnight, you're a lot more likely to end up in a cage than if it blows up over 10 years.
That's a really interesting theory. That is.
Yeah. My hunch is he is actually that stupid that he believes all of his stuff. Like I don't know. I definitely don't think he's a bright guy. Like these people are like, oh, Vitalik's so smart. Like he's so impressive how smart. No, I don't think he's that bright of a guy. And it's like people way smarter than me. Like I've heard Jimmy Song go on some pretty awesome rants about how he's a terrible programmer, and people that are Ethereum developers are basically script kiddies and all kinds of different stuff. Like these are not the A team, or the B team, or even the C team as far as developers go. Like people, they have this reputation of being these amazing, brilliant computer scientists, and at least I don't know, the shitcoin developers that I'm aware of are not anyone that if I had a company that I would ever hire.
Yeah.
Just on technical capabilities, let alone probably being annoying as shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Jimmy's song when he breaks it down.
Yeah. If you're not on his email, you should be. It's very good. Everybody listening.
Yeah. Oh, you got anything else?
Don't think so.
Don, any last questions, or Young Lurk? We'll see what happens with the China miners if they ever get over here.
One more shout out to Dirtbags Bar, the best place in Southern Arizona to meet your future ex-wife.
Yeah. I think one closing thing, we do have a pretty cool mining warehouse or supplier here, and I was looking at all of their stuff, and pretty much everything's out of stock. So that kind of goes to support potentially what Southwest was saying last week. So
yeah, I think that's probably the signal amidst all this noise is, do we or do we not see just an absolute fuck ton of miners hit the market? Because if we don't, that seems like pretty good evidence that there's some fuckery going on.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching that pretty closely. Cool. I think that's it.
All right.